habit number 3 then, integrate, integrate, integrate. Integrate sustainability into everything. And James Hagan, Vice President of Sustainability Environment for GlaxoSmithKline, made this very clear, that traditionally environment's been a bolt-on. What we need to do is build those changes to the essence of the business, right into the essence of the business. Nick Code, National Express Group, if it's not in your strategic planning process, then it will never be at the center of your business. So it's very clear, the center of the business. Some people talk about it being embedded into the DNA of the organization. And actually, for the NHS, I was talking about before, for their board, I developed this model because they wanted to know where are we on the grand scale of things. Well, there's only one NHS, and it was a particular part of the NHS at that. So it's very hard to find another organisation to compare like with like in terms of sort of absolute carbon emissions or anything else. So I decided to give them a maturity model instead, where they could decide where they are on the scale. And on the left-hand side of the scale is compliance, the traditional approach. Do what you can to stay out of jail, and that's it. Then moving up one, we've got lip service, where the company's gone beyond compliance for 1 or 2 projects, and they keep wheeling that out. Every time there's a company brochure or a website needing upgrading, the same old projects come out, and all the rest of it. But there's no forward momentum. The third stage bundle of projects is where a lot of organizations are, particularly smaller ones, where they have a sort of self-selecting team of enthusiasts who are setting all sorts of balls running, but every time they want to do a project, they have to go cap in hand to the boss to get some money. There's no real strategy, and outside that sort of team of enthusiasts, there's not that much buy-in. Sort of recent best practice has been this management system level, where you might have a formal environmental management system in place like ISO 14001, and with that you'll have defined responsibilities, you'll have some resources provided, and you'll certainly have short-term targets, and you'll be setting up projects and all the rest of it. But it all tends to take place in that green silo that James Hagan was talking about. It's all about missions control. It's all about just tweaking the system, and it doesn't really integrate into the essence of the business. And that's when you get to the full integration stage, which is the holy grail, where if you have clear commitment, you need clear commitment and leadership, you need a proper strategy in place with long-term goals, and you have to start aligning the systems and operations to that strategy, and total or near total, as it would probably be in practice, buy-in from all stakeholders, whether that's staff or people outside the business. And it's that last leap, I suppose, is what I'm talking about in the Green Executive, going from management up to full integration. And so I asked myself, where has this happened before? And the answer I came up with was total quality management in particularly in Japan, Japanese manufacturing, which transformed their manufacturing sector. Japan shouldn't have a manufacturing sector. They have high labor costs, they've got no natural resources worth talking about, and yet on automobiles, consumer electronics, they're one of the best in the world. And they did that through adopting the TQM principles, where they took quality out of the quality manager's office and integrated it through the business. They aligned all products, processes, everything else to delivering quality. And they not only revolutionized Japanese manufacturing, but then the rest of the world had to change to catch up. And it's that process and some of the processes under it which the book uses to look at how to actually go about delivering sustainability. So here's a little case study of integration. When I interviewed Peter White of Procter Gamble, he was very excited about Ariel Excel Gel. I don't think it had been on the market for very long at the point, but it had been designed from scratch to deliver on 3 points: performance, and it's been rated the best performing clothes washing product by Which magazine; price, which is competitive; and sustainability. And you can see on the front of it, it'll wash in almost cold water. Temperatures 15 degrees centigrade, and if you look at the life cycle impact of clothes or washing powders or anything else, the big spike is heating water for for clothes washing. So it's really tackling that problem head on. But apart from that, there isn't much green branding. The green's just one model of Ariel Excel Gel. You can buy one with pink and all the rest of it, but it's got the same 15 degrees in it. And the reason why they went for that is in the 90s they'd gone for the sort of ecover approach of niche green products alongside their mainstream products. And that failed in the marketplace. They found that only 5 to 8% of people would buy green and compromise on price or performance, to satisfy that green craving. So it's never going to storm the mainstream marketplace. So they've integrated the sustainability principles into the product, and there's no there's no trade-off there for the consumer. And companies that I interviewed, like Marks and Spencer's, have done exactly the same thing. They flirted a little bit with a green range of products, and then they just decided, no, we're going to put, say, recycled polyester into umbrellas, school uniforms, and cushions of all things. So they're bringing mainstream products green rather than launching green niches. So that's the integrate. Habit number 4 is these companies are now stretching themselves. Incremental improvements are no longer enough. And they're setting themselves ambitious targets. I was talking about Marks and Spencer's then with their Plan A. They had the ultimate goal of becoming the world's most sustainable retailer. So they want to be the best. And with companies like Walmart in the States and many others really competing in this space, that's no idle boast. And Sir Stuart Rose, who's then chief executive and chairman, when he set up Plan A, he put 120 million quid in up front. So there's the financial commitment we were talking about before. They weren't expecting to get it back. They just saw it as brand protection, brand enhancement. But they have got it back, and they're a bit wary about how much money they've actually made on Plan A because they don't want to be seen to be mercenary. So it's a little bit what I was talking about before in the business case. They aimed for that brand winning business level, and they actually ended up with the cost savings as well. But I always argue with people that the reverse doesn't always work. If you go for cost savings, then you're unlikely to go for the breakthrough type projects that'll deliver you the big competitive advantage. Going beyond Marks and Spencer's, InterfaceFLOR, the Interface Group is, if you're standing in an office on carpet tiles, there's a 40% chance that you're standing on carpet tiles manufactured by Interface. And despite being a pretty dirty industry, it's all oil-based chemicals and it's quite energy intensive and all the rest of it. They've set themselves a thing they call Mission Zero. They want to have a zero footprint, and that's almost the ultimate target. They're even talking about going beyond that and having a net positive effect on the environment, and that means they're serious about zero carbon emissions, serious about zero toxic materials, a zero impact, a negative impact on the world. And I'll show you. I'll come back to InterfaceFLOR quite a lot to show you how that's actually manifesting itself. But one of the things that came out, just to hit a practical note from these case studies, was that to stretch themselves, people were moving from incremental year-on-year targets to stretch targets. A year-on-year target's saying we will reduce our carbon footprint by 2% every year going into the future. So you expect to get the nice blue line, and instead, it starts off quite easy as you've got all the quick wins, but then you hit diminishing returns and you actually end up following the red line and things grind to a halt. What stretch targets do is you say, okay, in 5 or 10 years we're going to reduce our carbon footprint by 50% or 80% or whatever else, and you give yourself the flexibility in between to actually implement the big projects to get there. I'll just give you an example of how that thinking changes things. Diageo, humongous drinks company. Roberta from Diageo, who I interviewed over the phone, she's American, but she's very, very excited about what she calls her rock star projects in Scotland, in the distilleries. And there's 2 major environmental problems with making whiskey. One is the wastewater which is laden with all the raw materials that have gone through the distilling process. So it's very rich in organics. And the second is energy demand. Now, when they were doing year-on-year targets, they would be trying, insulate a pipe here, replace a boiler there. Can we get a more efficient motor for that pump? And just doing all these little incremental things. But they soon ran out of stuff to do. But when they went to stretch targets, it changed their mindset completely. And they started to think, right, how are we going to solve these problems for once or for all? And the answer in this case was that the wastewater, they converted that by anaerobic digestion into energy to power the plant. And those two anaerobic digesters are the biggest renewable energy projects in the UK outside the energy sector itself. So they are huge. And she put that thinking down to moving from year-on-year targets to stretch targets. So a very simple little change in mindset can have quite spectacular results. Right, habit number 5, make it everyone's responsibility. And I mentioned this with the whole TQM side. You can't put, in a TQM company, you can't throw quality issues back at the quality manager. It's your responsibility. In a company that's fully integrated on sustainability, you can't throw it back to the green team. If there's an environmental problem and it's in your area of work, you have to deal with it. It's your responsibility. And excuse me, I like this story of two forklift drivers. One, it was a factory I was visiting here in the UK. I'll try and hide their identity, but they make bespoke furniture kits, shall we say, sort of flat pack. And that's just a stock picture, so you won't get any clues from there. But when we were standing in their goods out area, there was all these damaged kits that couldn't go out to customers, and they were waiting while somebody went and disrupted the entire production system to fast track through some replacement parts and put them back in the kits and get them out. So a small amount of waste, it's just a bit of chipboard with a bit of laminate on top, was actually causing them an awful lot of stress in their business. And it was very obvious where it was coming from, because one of the forklift truck drivers in particular was driving like a complete idiot, and we saw him bump into things 2 or 3 times while we were there. Whereas in Interface, I mentioned before, the chief executive tells a story where somebody asked one of their forklift truck drivers what they did all day, and he said, I won't put on an American accent, "Ma'am, I come to work to save the planet, but you'll have to excuse me, because if I don't get this stuff down to the other end of the factory in the next minute, then it'll cause waste and problems further on through the system." And it just illustrated the difference between, my example, where the environmental manager was pulling his hair out because nobody had listened to him about such things like not damaging the kit, and the Interface example where everybody feels that they're part of it. And Nigel, who I interviewed from Interface, was talking about a swagger their staff have on this issue. Northern Foods, Paula Woodison, who has left Northern Foods now, but she put it very well that she didn't have a team. It was just her. And it was deliberately because they didn't want anybody to think it was somebody else's job. And they were trying to empower people to do their job in a green way rather than barracking them and telling them what to do. Give them permission to act, give them confidence to move forward, and allow them to fail until they get it right. And we'll come back to that last issue later on as well. Case study closer to home for me anyway, in Newcastle upon Tyne, is Muckle, who are lawyers. And they've got a reputation as ethical lawyers, which I always joke to them is sort of quite some achievement. But to engage their staff in environmental issues, instead of sort of sending around emails and diktats from above, they started off with a quiz. And they got people to guess, multiple choice questions. How much paper do you think every one of our partners uses per month? And, of course, nobody guessed that it would be as much as 3,000 sheets of paper, which was what it was. And they've got that down to 1,000 sheets now. And that way of sort of engaging with the staff to make it fun really, really worked. And they've gone on to keep competition going The 3 floors of their office block, they compete amongst themselves to see who can cut their carbon footprint the most each year. So really, and lawyers, you imagine, quite competitive. They really want to get in there and win the competition. Diageo, to take the other end of the scale, of a multinational megacorp, they do the same thing on a slightly different way, in that some of their sites get gold, silver, and bronze awards every year, depending on how good their environmental performance and environmental improvement has been. And they find that people really want to win the award. It's not you shall do that, it's they want to do it. They want to win the award, they want to get the plaque, and they want to take the kudos. And that's a big shift in the way that an awful lot of organisations seem to go about trying to engage their staff in these issues.